and gentlemen, and welcome to another very special edition of the Geeks Who Like Sports Leaderboard Interviews. As always, I'm Ray Carso in beautiful Los Angeles, California. To my best friend over the entire world, Leale in Philly. We have another very special guest for you today. He is probably the most recognized and easily the internet's most followed baseball coach. He has been coached at every level you can imagine, including most recently with the Chicago White Sox of the major leagues. He is Coach Matt Lisle. Coach, how are you doing today?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it.
We are super thrilled to have you here, Matt, because you have the distinct honor of this is our 100th episode between our regular episodes and our leaderboard interviews. So thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate it.
Honored to be the 100th guest for sure.
It's fitting, too, because you are a massive geek, which is going to play into this. And I love it because, as we always talk on this show, we get to ask you questions that no one asks you. You've probably been asked about baseball to death, right? But no one's asked you, what are your thoughts on the recent Star Wars films? We're going to get into that today. Throwing it back to you, Ray. I just had to get that out. I was ready to say something.
Yes, we are going to come at you from every angle, Matt, so be ready. But
I'll tell you guys, your producer and the slant of your guys' show, I responded a lot quicker than I do to a lot of other responses. A lot of requests that I get because it's like, oh, this is interesting. This is up my alley. So I really like the angle that you guys are doing. It's pretty cool.
Thank you. That's going to be a free promo for us. No.
Yes.
Thanks, Matt. That means a lot.
We appreciate it. We are going to ask you things that you typically don't get on any other show, but we do have to start with some of the typical questions, or as we like to call the origin story. For those who might not be as familiar with you, Matt, tell us how you got your start in coaching and give us your story, how you got to where you are now to where you've coached at every level in baseball and softball.
Yeah, it's been such a crazy journey that I probably need to figure out how to tell it like in a 30-second story. But the gist of it is I was a father at 19, just out of high school. I was going to play football at Fresno State University, and my world kind of changed everything that summer as I had my first daughter, who turned 24 years old last week. And so I tried to play college baseball. I was kind of struggling through that for a few years and trying to figure out how to do that. And my old high school coach asked me to come back and be his assistant coach one year. It was 2002. And halfway through the year, complaining parent and the perfect storm ended up, I became the head varsity baseball coach at my old high school at like 24 years old. And next thing you know, I'm coaching high school. I'm like, oh, this is really fun. I could do this for a living. And, up until that point, like my freshman year of college, I was a computer science major. I was a philosophy major, communications. I really didn't know really what I wanted to do. And my grandfather coached college football for 38 years. My dad had coached for a long time. And so it kind of just worked out. It just landed in my lap. And I started just going in. I started coaching college, coaching high school a little bit longer, and ended up getting into softball in 2012 at the University of Oregon. And that just kind of catapulted my career. I got into social media at that point. And with social media, I really kind of dug my heels into, I thought, hey, you know what? There's not a lot of hitting gurus on social media, and I'm going to be the guy. And the timing of it just worked out a lot. And so I coached college for a long time. I worked with, and because of social media, I had a lot of professional baseball players come to me and say, hey, I follow you on Twitter. I really like your stuff. I'd like to work with you. And again, like just kind of snowballed more and more into jobs and job opportunities. And I had some hitters that had some success, which told, general managers and teams. So it all culminated into, I get a call from the Chicago White Sox that Sean Casey and Jim Thome had recommended me for a position, and we want to meet with you. And again, I just kind of has continued in my life, and my business, the Hitting Vault, everything has just continued to just build. And I joke a lot with my wife that my story really involves Facebook and Twitter. Social media is the driver for all of this. I have almost 1 million followers right now, and without social media, I probably would be a high school baseball coach somewhere, and it's not bad. Right. I love that time, but it as a tool and as a vehicle in my journey, it just has created incredible opportunities for me, and I'm so blessed to have done that. So fast forward to 2020, I've got a book that's going to come out in November. I've been working on for over a year. I'm working on a podcast, the Coach Lisle Show, similar to what you guys are doing with different stuff. I've got the hitting vault, and I'm coaching, and so it's been an interesting journey, to say the least, and that's kind of where I'm at now.
I'll tell you a couple things. I love your story because we have a lot of trailblazers on this show. We have a lot of people that are self-made in a lot of ways. And again, anybody who follows your story knows the part of it where you hit rock bottom at one point where you were homeless in 2010. It's well documented, right? And you were able to come forward. So there's two things I wanted to kind of ask you or get your thoughts on here. One is that one of the things we noticed, and this is in sports, it's in business, it's in everything, is that there is a drive or a passion that exists. And everyone that we've spoken to that has found success that is abnormal, right? And again, most professional athletes share that. And it breaks the barrier of, oh, that guy got lucky, right? And I want to make sure our listeners understand there's nothing lucky about this story or any of the stories. You had a passion. And you drove to find that passion and turn it into something. The other aspect of it, and it's funny because I was just talking about this today with someone, is that timing is extremely, extremely important to success, right? And I love that you recognize the power of social media at the right time and that it exploded your career. And again, it just shows that lots of different things have to fall in place at the right time. But could you talk for a quick second about the timing of social media, which clearly, as you just said, played a major role in it, but also the drive that you had to succeed? Because I don't ever like that to let that go unnoticed by our audience.
So I would say, and it was all from Gary Vee, and I know a lot of people say that, but for me, 2012 Gary Vee, I read one of his books about give, jab, right hook, and so I thought, hey, I'll take that same principles to Facebook, and I'm just going to give away stuff. I'm not going to ask for anything. I'm just going to give away all my tips, and it allowed me to build this huge following all of a sudden. And I've had friends and other colleagues come to me in the last couple of years and say, hey, I'd love to get following like you have on Twitter. I think I have 150,000 on Twitter, something like that. The thing is, you have to understand, like you talked about the timing. In 2013, there was like three of us. There were like three internet hitting gurus on the thing. So it was easier. The landscape was different. There's thousands of them now. And so the landscape is just a lot more crowded. So, if I had tried to do this stuff now, I think it would be a lot different. Right. But in 2013, I tell people a lot of times, I was doing it 8 to 12 hours a day back then. Like when I say I was doing social media, I mean, I was 8 to 12 hours a day figuring out what to post on Facebook and what to do with it. It was my whole time. And I'll tell you what, I still have screenshots from some of my best friends who back then texted me and say, all these stuff you're sharing, it's a little like there was a lot of people who were naysayers saying like, what are you doing? What's the value in that? There's not, what's the point of this? And so the timing was perfect for me. But I will say, I think that what you're talking about with different people from a drive standpoint is that for me, I get addicted and consumed with the desire for learning. I love to learn things. So when I got into high school coaching, I realized after that first year that I knew a lot about baseball, but I knew nothing about coaching. And so I wanted to learn to be the best coach. And so I'm like, you know what, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go all in and say this. And then I got same thing when it came to hitting. I didn't want to be just an okay hitting coach. I want to be the best in the world. So what does it take to do that? And then throughout that journey, like in 2010, I was homeless. I can still to this day picture myself in the Safeway grocery store parking lot, eating tuna out of a can and like trying to figure out where I was sleeping that night, buddy's couch, what I was gonna do, and I was avoiding the repo guy on my Toyota Scion that I had, the only piece of anything I owned, with all my stuff in the car. But as bad as that was, and it was as bad as you can imagine, deep down inside of me, I think part of it, I say it was, I was naive, but there was a part of me that I believed that there was something bigger out there, that I was going to get there someday, and that this was just part of the journey, and that rock bottom sucks, and I don't want to be in this position, but there was something in me that kind of said, hey, God's got something bigger for you down the road. And I'll tell you, I had a group of friends sit down with me 2012, 13, and full on intervention. Okay. There was an intervention with me and with career and work. And a lot of my friends were saying, hey, Matt, you've got to stop coaching. You've got to get a real job. You got to take care of your family. Forget this coaching thing. And they sat me down and told me this. But one of my friends sat me down in this process and said, Matt, if you just stay focused and stay away from all this stuff and try to be the best hitting coach you can be, I promise you that one day, the San Francisco Giants or a major league team is going to come calling. And in 2013, I was like, BS, no chance it's going to happen. I'm a high school coach that's never done anything. I'm just starting the social media thing. I never played pro ball. The odds were so stacked against that even myself, as much as I knew I wanted to be the best, I knew there was never a chance that was going to happen. And as the years went by and starting to see things come to fruition, I'm like, you know what? Like, the sky is the limit. Like, if you really believe it, if you're willing to do the work. And so as much of a drive there was, to me, there was just this burning desire, like, hey, what is it going to take to get there? And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to do that.
Well, and I love it for the audience. You had the vision. You had the vision that you wanted to accomplish, and I think that that's another big part of the picture that sometimes people miss. One of the things I love about this show, and on the surface, it is geeks who like sports, right? But whenever we have a guest on, we really do try and dive into this stuff because we want people to know that if you have a dream, you have a right to a dream, but you want to accomplish that dream, and there's tools to do that. And success leaves clues, right? In my experience, I was told my whole life, you'll never make anything in ice hockey. You should find something else to do. Became a professional hockey coach, made it a low level of minors. Ray was told, there's nothing in gaming. There's no point in gaming. There's no future for you. He lives in Los Angeles. He was a professional gamer, professional writer in gaming. Then we merged those together to make the show. And so just bring that up, not tapping ourselves on the back. What I'm saying is I love your story because it's inspiring. I love the things you said. You have to be willing to put in the work. I love that you said at the beginning you were doing 8 to 12 hours of work on social media. You didn't put a post up and walk away. You did a full work day and then some to make this work for yourself at the right time, right? And again, when you look at this show, right, like there is no geek sports show. And Ray and I knew that. And we wanted to dive in. And that's why we're looking to speak to people like you. So it's an incredibly inspiring story. And I just want to make sure that our audience takes those tools out of it. Because if you're at home and you're a dreamer, you have a goal, a vision you want to get to. And even if it seems like there's no point, you can do it. You just have to have the right internal dialogue, some good people surrounding you, obviously, that some bad ones too, I guess, to help motivate you. But that drive to the future is so important. And Matt, you have totally done it. I mean, it's only been 10 years. You've gone from living in your car to geeks who like sports. I know that's not the pinnacle of that, but you know what I'm saying? The follow-up question I have is I've noticed just from following you on social media, you're just like me. I'm a big fan of great quotes, right? Just quotes that are simple and can motivate. Right on your website, it's anyone can trust the process, but champions love the process. That's a quote of your own. I've noticed you quote Wooden a lot. Do you have a favorite quote or a couple of quotes that like you go to more than once a week? And then I'm going to use this shamelessly to transition to geekdom because I'm just going to throw in the Yoda. There is no, try, do or do not. But is there any sports quotes that you love that really govern kind of the decision-making on any given week?
Right now I'm reading a book called The Next Right Thing, and that my mom actually sent me, and I can't tell you the author, which I should know, but for me, that kind of pointing back to like when I was doing social media in 2013 and I was building this following and I had no idea, like I had vision, like I wanted to be the best hitting coach and I want to provide value, but to me, I think what a lot of people get caught up into is like, it's going to take me this long to get there. It's going to take me, I got this 5-year plan instead of thinking right now, like what is the next right thing? And so for me, I've always tried to be driven by what is the thing right in front of me today? What can I get accomplished right now? Even if I have no idea where it's going to go, I just know it's providing value to people and I'm helping people. And at some point it's going to turn into something, like my book that's coming out in November, like I never planned on writing a book. I never did. But last year being on the road a lot, I was thinking, what? My story's going to help somebody at some point. So I'm going to sit down and start writing. So quote wise, I would tell you that a lot of people would give me a hard time, friends, about quotes on Twitter. Like, oh, you share all these quotes, and what's the point of it? I would tell you that for me, my strategy of social media when I first started and still in 2020 are everything that I post are things directed to me. These are things I'm saying to myself, that's speaking into my life. And that resonate with me as a dad or a coach or a person. And so most of the quotes that I'm sharing, like there are things trying to keep me accountable to the things that I think are important. So,
I love that.
Whenever I'm sharing quotes, if you're reading them, obviously I'm hoping they're helping and resonating with other people, but usually it has to do with my mindset at that time.
Right.
And
awesome.
they're encouragements to me. If you've read the book, Love Languages, the 5 Love Languages, my love language is words of affirmation and encouragement. So I use it on myself all the time with tweets and Facebook posts. And so I would say just any quote that is around accountability and ownership and trusting. And like I said, the quote that I've been working on and sharing a lot is, again, it's easy to trust the process. I think a lot of college students and people who have been in self-help books and you're on this thing, like, trust the process. And they're like, they're willing to do the pieces. But like going along for the ride and just trusting the process, to me, you're gonna get better than someone who doesn't. But the people who excel, the 12-year-olds who become pro players, the people that excel in life, they love the boring grind of stuff, and they love the process, the hard work, and they're not just willing to trust it. And so to me, the idea of actually loving the process, loving learning, loving getting better, loving the grind of it, and when you hit a roadblock, pushing through it, and loving that fight of getting through that, to me is kind of the stuff and the quote that I would say anything that has to do with that. I'm a big fan of Jocko Willink and some of those
76ers when you get a chance. The 76ers didn't trust the process enough, I think. But no, it was their marketing campaign. No, that's a great answer, Matt. Sorry, go ahead, Ray.
No, I just wanted to bring the things before we get into the geek side of things. We mentioned a couple times that obviously you're part of the White Sox organization. The White Sox are currently in first place in the American League Central. They're one of the best hitting teams in baseball. You've obviously had to work with some of these players, especially guys who have come through the organization. Luis Robert looks like he's going to be Rookie of the Year this year. Eloy Jimenez, Jose Abreu, these guys are hitting bombs. How does it feel for you to be seeing this team perform the way they have? Because obviously there's still, I'm sure, some of your influence on a lot of these guys and the success that they've had. How do you feel right now watching this team and the way they're performing?
This is just fun to watch. In my time there, getting to see those guys, you just saw that, like, the youth and the talent that they have it was just a matter of time. When I first met Luis Robert on the field, hitting batting practice or in a cage, and I've worked with a lot of big name guys. I've texted some friends and like, this is the guy. This guy right here, I've never seen anything like this. This guy is on another level from athleticism. He's a specimen. There's no other way to say it, Luis Robert. And so, again, for me, in my time with the White Sox, it was like, wow, this young talent and what they have coming up, it's going to blossom at some point. And I thought it'd probably be 21, 22 as it got going, but with Luis up and some of the older guys like Abreu, it's really worked out for them, and it's just fun to watch. It's fun to see guys that you've been around and see that they're actually doing what their potential is. I think in pro baseball, everyone hopes that players pan out to their potential and their hype. And I know obviously it's still too early to say for long term on some of these guys, but like just to see the success Luis Robert has, it's fun to see that some stood up to the hype. And because I think a lot of players that we all grew up with, we had this huge expectations of didn't pan out. And so it's always fun to root for those.
Yeah. What are your thoughts in general on this? It's kind of the elephant in the room on the COVID shortened season that has occurred in baseball. How they've handled things. Obviously, they've just announced that there's going to be the playoffs will be in bubble cities. What are your thoughts on the shortened season and the playoff picture that what they're doing?
I mean, I think they did the best they could with the shortened season situation. I don't know. I don't know if there was going to be baseball. I think that's the way that they were going to do it. And so, but I just think the issue that we have with baseball versus any other sport is just like from a stat standpoint and a history standpoint, whatever happens this year is going to be asterisked and talked about. And so you kind of root and hope, like, I hope nobody hits 400. I hope nobody does this, because that conversation will continue forever. We'll be 65-year-old men on the Geeks shows, and we'll be talking about that year that there were 60 games that doesn't count. I grew up a diehard A's fan. I did the out-of-town scoreboard for the A's for 17 years. That's a whole other story. But, like, if you're an A's fan, I went to the playoffs 6 years as an A's fan, and we got out of the wild card once. And so, in my opinion, it's like, you know what? The A's are going to win it in 2020 because that's the way it is. Oakland A's, they're going to, and it's like, you're excited for it, but like, and so, and I would say the first thing I thought about when I came to the bubble, honestly, was just like, wow, I wish I was there. Like, to be able to have multiple teams at one site seems like the most fun experience as a fan or as a coach or player to do. And I think they're doing the best they can for the most part. I would say that I've been a huge fan of the playoffs expanding. The one-game wild card, I think, is one of the stupidest things in all of sports. You play 162 games, and based on when the schedule ends, you might have a starting pitcher ready to go on that day, and there's one game and you're done. It doesn't make any sense to me. And so I'm glad they're figuring out some expansion, and I hope next year and the year after they can figure out something similar to this year in the sense of how the playoffs are, because I think the expansion of the playoffs also helps the low-income teams have a shot, and some of the salary cap stuff. I think it'll drive some of that. You're seeing teams like the Marlins now have a wild card. As of this moment, as we're recording the podcast, the Marlins have a playoff spot right now, and it's very true. They are. There is talks of them seriously considering going to this 16-team playoff in the future, because and it is similar. Like, obviously, it's worked for hockey, it's worked for basketball. So it'd be fun to finally see baseball, who have more traditionally kind of stuck to their roots with very small playoff brackets, maybe finally expand. I agree with you on that. So. And I wouldn't mind. I don't think the players. I think even if you shorten the season, 150 went back to 154 games, or they figure out something else, or I think most of the major league players that I know, the spring training is way too long. 6 weeks, or some of the pitchers are there for 8 weeks. It's just too long. And most of them are all training in the off season with trainers now, guys like me and pitching coaches. And so, I think back in the day, even in the 80s and 90s, probably had guys show up to spring training and they weren't in shape. Nowadays, I mean, these guys are literally November, December, they're cranking full speed going ahead. So I think the spring training, shortening that would probably help a lot too. So. Well, and even that, and guys go down and play in like the Dominican League and like Mexican leagues and other leagues in the winter and stuff. Yeah, a lot of these guys they're ready to go, 24/7, 365. So. Yep.
Matt, I do have to follow up on this, or my audience will kill me. I've been extremely critical of baseball this year, and I want to get your take on it, because I've also said this. As someone who's been involved in hockey, I always say that you see so little of what goes on in an athlete's life and a coach's life. You see, probably below 10% of actually what's happening in these guys' lives. But I've been very critical of baseball this year, and the word we kept coming back to on our show is integrity. Is the integrity of the season intact? Now, I do believe that if the postseason goes off without a hitch, the season can redeem itself. But as a fan, and please feel free to combat this, feel free to disagree with me on this, I really want your honest opinion. I feel like the integrity of the regular season has been heavily compromised, just due to delays and teams going out and partying, which somehow wasn't thought of before the season.
Seven inning doubleheaders.
Yeah, and then obviously the extra innings rule, which I know exists in softball, but that's new to a lot of baseball fans. The only positive I've seen from this is that I think we've seen now how important team culture is to winning, because I think the teams that are really succeeding this season have a really strong culture within, and it's clear, right? But I had to ask you that, and I had to be upfront with you on that as a baseball fan, that I'm not enjoying this regular season. I don't. Asterisks might not be something that I want to do here. But as a fan, how would you respond to that?
And I'll say I've watched the least amount of baseball I've ever watched this year. But, for me, I guess, I think everyone has this COVID has affected everybody differently. And for me, for the length of time we didn't have anything, I will say that it is nice sometimes after a long day when I get on the couch that there is a baseball game on, and then I can turn on MLB Network on. They're talking about baseball. And so for me, it's like that combo of like, yeah, I'm not really into this, but I'm glad that at least we're having the conversation a little bit. I'm in a fantasy league with my buddies. We've been in, this is our 21st season. And a lot of our talk is like, does this season really count for our league and a lot of stuff. And it's like, you know what? It's just fun to set your lineup. And even though it's different guys, so I think I think there's both, I definitely think there's both sides of it. And I guess to me, again, as long as I'm rooting against the guys who hit 400, and I'm rooting against any type of weird records being broken. Mm-hmm. I don't want to see a team be under 500 win the World Series. So I'm just kind of hoping that it ends up being okay, and there's not too much of those type of things happening. And to me, I would be okay with that. But if it falls apart in some other ways, and it'd be kind of like, oh man, that wasn't great. But it is nice for me personally to be able to have at least some of it on TV and to be able to watch a little bit here and there and at least have conversations like we're having now versus, I wonder when it's going to come back, and I hope it's going to come back. Stuff like that.
Well, and I'll fully admit this. Like I said, they need the postseason to go off without a hitch, which to be fair, it looks like they're planning for that. Bubbling the teams is the right thing to do. I think if they have a really strong postseason, that's going to be the redeeming factor. And I'll say this just to follow up and agree with you. When DraftKings started doing betting on the presidential debates, I was like, we need sports back now. This is not good. I don't want to be betting on this stuff on DraftKings. Yeah. Right. So I totally agree with you there that, and again, I think we're all appreciative of what the professional athletes, the coaches of all the major sports are putting on the line, because this is not easy for them. We just shared a video today of an NHL player coming home from the bubble who hasn't seen his family in a few months. Yeah. There's a lot more going on here than just the game. And again, while athletes do make millions of dollars, there is sacrifice being made that I believe should be acknowledged on some level. You don't have to feel bad for them, but there should be an acknowledgement of, hey, thank you for playing, giving us a distraction.
Yes. And I would say, I've been away from my family a lot on the road as a coach many, many years, but I'll tell you what, I was in spring training for 42 straight days last year, and you don't get a day off in spring training. So I'll tell you, my family came visit for a week, but those stretches of time are very, very difficult for anybody, father of kids and stuff like that. So like some of these guys who've been in there for a long time, I don't know how they can do it for the period of time they do. It has got to be really, really difficult.
All right, so now as we transition into the geek side of things, I play a lot of MLB The Show, and I can't lay off the outside slider. Matt, what would you recommend to me in MLB The Show? How do I recognize the outside slider and stop swinging?
It's really just guessing. I mean, I would tell you that pitching development has advanced so much faster than hitting development in the last few years that it's so incredibly tough. And that's a conversation another time in the sense of like why the strikeout numbers are up and all the things. But I'm telling you guys right now, when you have pitchers throwing 100, their changeups are 92 and their sliders and cutters are 95, none of us would stand in the box and have a chance in the world to touch that thing. And so pitching is just unbelievably difficult in 2020.
And with that, Matt, now you can officially add to your website that you have coached esports as well, thus making you the official most followed baseball and softball and esports coach of all time. It broke here first. Well done. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Ray.
Actually, that does bring up a good point, though. Speaking of the advancements of pitching, I want to get one more quick thing on actual baseball. There's been a lot of talk about the electronic strike zone, about the removal of the home plate umpire from calling balls and strikes. Are you for it or are you against it? What are your thoughts on that?
So I would tell you that I'm pretty much against the grain on most traditional stuff. I'm all for the umpire strike, electronic strike zone.
Yes.
I'm all for the runner on second base in extra innings. To me, the reason I've coached softball for 8 years now. the reason why softball is so much fun to coach is that we can play a game in under an hour and a half. It's high tempo. It's a high speed game. The game moves fast, even though it's 7 innings, which I'm not a huge fan of in the sense of tempo, but like they're fast games. And I'll tell you what, 30 years from now, if baseball is still going strong, and I hope it is, I think that they're going to have to figure out how my kids, my 8-year-old son and kids across the country, for us old guys sitting through a 3.5 hour game, we do it and we love it. We know all the nuances of it, but I can tell you right now, I got 5 kids and baseball is boring and it's way too long. And they're going to have to start figuring out some of that stuff in order to not lose kids more to, soccer and others, honestly, more exciting sports.
Did you ever see the movie Basketball in the beginning?
Oh, I love baseball. I saw it in the theater. It probably was right after high school.
When interleague play didn't work, they tried intersports play. See the left fielder get tackled by a linebacker.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, it's terrific. And that's actually a good point, in terms of the pace of the game. I think that's part of the why, not to toot my own horn too much, but I do a lot of MLB The Show Twitch streams, and they do very well because a lot of folks come in, and it's a 9-inning game in an hour and 20 minutes. Yep. They get now, of course, obviously there's no commercials, and there's a lot of stuff that's been cut out, a lot of the hoopla and ceremony and stuff, because I just go from hitter to hitter to hitter and yep. whatnot. But there definitely needs to be a way, I think, that if we can improve the pace of play, that you'll get a lot more people back into the game, because it is something that baseball is struggling with in terms of their audience. It's every year we hear this, that the average baseball viewer is getting older and older. And
I hope, and I think they will figure it out. So, someone along the lines, I think you see guys right now like Trevor Bauer and different guys on social media that are trying to drive the game in that way. And it will happen, I believe. As the regimes change and people change.
Yeah, no, for sure. So speaking of online and social media and video games and all other fun stuff, we Matt, it's maybe not well known that you are one of us. We mentioned at the top of the show, you are a geek who likes sports. You're also a huge Star Wars fan, as Lee is, as you can tell if you look at his background. I have a poster dedicated to the Sith Lords behind me. So we have to ask right off the bat, what's your favorite Star Wars film, Matt?
My favorite Star Wars film, and it's not on anybody's top of the list, is Return of the Jedi. I'll tell you, I think for me, I was born in 1977 when Star Wars came out. And so Return of the Jedi, I was like 9 years old, and like the whole father-son thing. And whatever reason, I was a huge Luke Skywalker fan, and that all coming together with his dad. And the Ewoks, as a 9-year-old, it couldn't have been better. And so for me, that was me. And I'll tell you guys what, I'm the oldest of 7 kids. And I have 2 sisters, and my sister, who's younger than me, she's about 8 years younger than me. Fun fact: the greatest Star Wars connection ever happened to me with my sister Brianna. She married a guy named Ben Burt Jr. So my brother-in-law is Ben Burt Jr., and his dad is Ben Burt Sr., who invented all of the sounds of Star Wars lightsabers. And a fun fact for your audience, the character in the movie Star Wars BB-8, BB-8, Ben Burt the Eighth, that's Ben Burt. So he's Ben Burt the Eighth. It's BB-8.
Wow.
And so my brother-in-law is Ben Burt Jr., and he actually just got done doing the sound for Mandalorian 2, season 2. And by the way, he told me it's way better than season 1. So just a little tidbit there. So all that to say, I was a huge geek, Star Wars fan. That my sister marries, and it was, totally random. So I have gone to Skywalker Ranch multiple times. I've seen premieres of movies there. I've gotten to see a lot of really cool Star Wars stuff that, and like I said, going to Skywalker Ranch, I've seen a few premieres there. I saw Frozen there. So I've been very, very lucky in that sense. And I continue to this day. One of my goals is to convince my brother-in-law, figure out some way to be an extra in a Star Wars movie down the line. That is my ultimate goal of my relationship with my brother-in-law.
So, man, I got to be honest with you. I really enjoyed our baseball conversation, but the last 45 seconds is just blah, 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 blah for me. Where do I even start with that? Let's go back to Jedi real quick, because I do want to comment on what you said about Jedi. I think that Jedi has the best Jedi scenes in the entire Star Wars film. And what I mean by that is I'm talking about the Force and the essence of the Force and the Emperor and Darth Vader. His interactions with Luke and that are very deep and very strong. I think what keeps people from picking that movie is they're split on the Ewoks and they're split on, the Forest Moon of Endor. Even Harrison Ford famously said, I didn't think it was going to be a teddy bear parade and I should have died in that film, which he got his wish eventually, which is kind of funny. Spoiler alert. But I've always said this, that the Force, the Jedi, all of that stuff, that film actually is the pinnacle for me. So I said, I'm not a Jedi hater at all. I mean, like I said, I know why people pick Empire. It's obviously the most well-produced, the most well-written.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally understand where you're coming from. Now, I do have to go right to The Mandalorian.
Yes.
Which has been the greatest Star Wars property of the last 20 years by far.
Amazing.
The writing, the stories, the fact that they are so unafraid to tap into these expanded universe things that we all love. I believe you that season 2 is going to be better than season 1, because I think season 1 was just a tester for like, hey, I mean, what has Jon Favreau made that's been popular over the last 20 years, right? But, he nailed it. Right, exactly, right? So one, I'm going to guess you're looking forward to that. And then and this is where the interview gets fun, right? Your professional opinion, what are you looking forward to seeing in that second season?
I just left season 1, like just trying to figure out, like I'm always trying to figure out the timelines of things and like where everything is and how it plays out. And so for me, I'm really curious to see just the connections with the old stories. Like, and for me, the different times, like when the stormtroopers were shooting at the little guy and not hitting him, and like some of the humor in that, but also, anytime they draw a parallel to the old stories or new ones, it's fun for me to see that connection between them. So I'm kind of hoping I've heard that the production value of season 2 is much higher. I think Disney figured out too, hey, this thing's huge. Let's pour some more money into it. Let's do it bigger and better than even season 1. So I'm just looking forward to the character development of the child and the Mandalorian, and like, where's that going? What are they going to do there? I'm very curious, just from a character development standpoint. To me, it looks really, really fun, and just to have new, fresh Star Wars stories told. To me, that was really cool. Just get to know new characters and stuff like that. I just thought it was really well done.
Yeah, the brilliance, and Ray and I have talked about this in depth. The brilliance of that show is that it's just slightly self-aware of itself, like in a Deadpool way, which we thought was amazing. Like you said, the stormtroopers missing everything. But it also gives the same exact feeling that I think all of us got from watching the original trilogy, which The Force Awakens had for about 10 minutes, and then the rest of the movies kind of gave that up. But that's the connection point. And, a lot of people always say about not just Star Wars, but even other geek properties like Ghostbusters or, some of those big properties from the 80s that like, well, it's not for you anymore. It's for your kids. And, let me get your thoughts on this, is that, look, it is for my kids, but I think that's completely short-sighted to ignore, the 30 to 40-year-old audience that grew up on these films, because here's the deal. I got to share it with my kids, right? If you take me out of the equation, I might not want to be there anymore. So, I think that The Mandalorian is completely, even though it's a little bit older, you wouldn't put your 5-year-old in front of that one most likely, but, that show's really captured that essence of, like you said, what I felt when I watched Return of the Jedi. I feel that watching The Mandalorian.
Yes. And I think, for me, my 16-year-old son, he got to see 7, 8, 9 with me on premiere at night, and I think Rogue One and Solo as well. And so we went on opening night and saw it, and getting to share those, because for me, I grew up as a kid in those 3 movies, and I watched them on VHS. And then I'll be honest with you, I saw Phantom Menace 7 times in the theaters. That's how much of a nerd I was. And looking back now, Like, I'm like, and it's actually, I hated it for a while, then came back to it. I watched it with my kids like the last few months ago. I'm like, okay, I like it. 2 and 3 is a whole different story. I won't get there, but I saw those in my 20s. And so for me, this new time was a chance to get to hang, like I said, with my 16-year-old son now. He was probably, 11-ish when we get, so getting to share that with him and have the conversations of like, who's this guy? What's that guy? And, and to have a captive audience of like, who is this character? And getting to like share your knowledge of that with your kids is just a really fun thing to do because, for us, geeked out for all these years, it's like, oh, how many times can we talk about this character? And then now we're older, it's just not fresh conversation. But with like, when your kid says, okay, who is this guy? And you're like, oh, well, this guy is this story. It's like, it kind of brings that back, and it's really fun to be able to, educate them on that and try not to spoil it and watch them experience it. And for me, the fun part of that is that when I watch my 8-year-old son watch it and see the reactions, it's like, man, that had to have been the same reaction I had when I saw that for the first time as a kid too. So
I've got this great video of my son who is about to be 7, and he was watching Empire Strikes Back, and I really groomed him to watch Vader come out as Luke's dad. Like, I did it right. He didn't know about it. There's this great video of my son. He's holding, I can't remember what he was holding, but he watches, he goes, I am your father. And he just, his eyes get big and he drops what he's holding and he just looks at me. He's like, he's his dad? I was like, yes, son. Yes, he is. That is his father. And then inside I was like, I have done my job as a Star Wars father. It was like, awesome. That was what it was like, yeah, but that was a big moment for me. But
absolutely.
Yeah, we talk all the time about how, if you, because we're all around the same age, in the 90s, even leading up to the Phantom Menace, it just was not cool to be a Star Wars fan in a lot of places. And you were a loser, you were a nerd. And it's amazing how Star Wars and Marvel and DC and Disney have completely brought back a golden age, if you will, of geekdom. And Ray and I are very open. If you're new to that world and you're just jumping in, there's nothing wrong with that.
Welcome.
Yeah, exactly. But we remember those years where it's just like, man, I wonder if I could get like a replica Empire Strikes Back Luke gray jacket from Hoth, or when he's fighting Vader and people are like, you're a loser. And I'm like, I'm not, but that's completely fair conversation right now. Sorry, Ray, you go ahead. I'm obviously geeking out here.
No, it's of course. I mean, it's perfectly fine. We're talking about Disney Plus though a little bit, and I want to we're talking about going to the movies, and this is actually a good time to bring up another big subject we like to talk about on the show. We talk about going to the movies. We all saw Star Wars, well, at least the prequels and the recent trilogy in film, the theaters. I didn't see this. I didn't see Star Wars in the theaters until the special editions, in the 90s, but. I had to use an old ratty VHS tape for the first time I saw A New Hope, but
laser disc.
Yeah, or laser disc, a Betamax. No,
Betamax.
Yeah, but we're talking. The big thing that's happening right now is because of the pandemic that's going on in the world. Is that the theaters are struggling right now to stay open, and there's been a huge push to try and put more stuff onto video on demand. So I want to get your thoughts, Matt. Do you think that the days of seeing these big blockbusters, at least as of right now, are they in theaters? At least, are they in danger? Are they threatened? And what do you think is going to be the future potentially of the movie going experience? As it feels like video on demand is really the way to go now for a lot of these places.
Yeah, I would say it just depends on. I hope it doesn't. I mean, it just depends on the genre too. I think like a romantic comedy, I can see it on my 65-inch TV, and I don't experience it. But I'll tell you, I'm sure you guys have experienced this. But like, I camped out for Phantom Menace for 3 days beforehand. I was the first person in line. The news crew was there. But like, when you see Star Wars, like a movie like Star Wars or Marvel, like Endgame, when you see it on opening night and it's a packed crowd, the energy and like that experience is so much different than watching it on your couch, no matter how big your sound system is and all stuff. And the same thing comes with sporting events. I have no problem. I enjoy sports on my couch with my friends watching a game, and it's a great experience. But I've been to Game 7 at Boston Gardens. I have been to a World Series. I've been to these things, and let me tell you what, like when you've been to an event like that, the atmosphere, the experience, you talk about it for your whole entire life.
Yeah.
And so I really hope it doesn't go away for those type of things. Again, like the Star Wars and the Marvels and the movie experiences. I hope that they find ways to continue to do big events like that, IMAX theaters, versus just releasing them. It's just a different experience.
Right. And just to follow up on that, and the keyword here is experience. And that's what Ray and I always talk about is theaters need to up their game. Cinemas need to up their game and create a better experience than just a $50 cash drop on a movie you may or may not like. And Ray and I have gone to so many movie premieres together. And you're right. Look, there's nothing like going to a new Star Wars film. And then, it used to be the LucasArts logo came up and it was nothing for a long time ago in a galaxy far away. And then nothing. And the whole audience holds their breath. And it's boom, yeah, this is kind of what happens.
So true.
Like the footage of Endgame, like you said, when Captain America finally says, Avengers assemble, like you can watch montages of audiences watching that, and you get chills watching them.
Yes.
So, when it's safe, obviously, when it's safe to go back to group activities, we really hope that theaters create the better experience. And like you said, it's got to match like what you just said. Like you leave it, you tell people about it forever. Those moments that I just spoke about, those are moments with my friends and my wife, Ray, that I'll remember forever. I remember seeing these things. By the way, I watched Phantom Menace 7 times as well in the theater.
Phantom Menace gets so much hate, and I don't know why. I know why it's Jar Jar, but like outside of Jar Jar,
it doesn't bother me. But I really enjoyed the beginning of the story. But to me, like I said, to me, two is my. I've tweeted about it. I have to find this tonight. My rankings. But 2 is the very. Other than that could be a whole nother talk for another time. 8. I walked away from 8 so angry that I almost tapped out. Not that I would ever tap out, but that 9 saved. It worked out for me, but 8 was rough for me to walk away and go, wow, we've gone a different route. And I understand all the reasons why. I totally get it, but like as someone who's invested 43 years into this thing. Like you hurt my feelings a lot with some stuff that happened in 8. So
Matt, are you trying to tell me that you don't like sand?
Say it one more time.
I said you don't like sand. That you don't like, when Anakin doesn't like sand and
the hour-long casino scene and I'm just like, what is happening right now? There's a lot of in that movie that I'm just like, okay, we've had to wait for all these years for these things to come out, and like, where are you going with this? This would be a cool TV show, but
this goes back to what I said before, is that and the director Ryan Johnson said, well, we need to challenge the audience, and I remember thinking, no, you don't. You didn't need to challenge the audience in that way. Like, there's, you know what I mean? Like, that's what Disney Plus is for, and. Yes. And again, there's a lot of people that like that movie and defend that movie. Totally. It's like, that's what we needed, was to be challenged. And I'm not trying to argue with them, but no, like the thing about The Force Awakens, that was so great was that it didn't do that. And it was like, hey, the best review of The Force Awakens was it's like visiting an old friend. And I thought that was spot on. And I'm like, that's exactly what we needed then. And then the last Jedi was just like, it's like killing an old friend. That's what it felt like, So
it really did. It felt like Ryan was just like, you know what? I'm gonna just burn this thing down and rebuild it.
That's what he literally did. He burnt down the giant tree. Like, he burnt everything down. Really all the Jedi records. He got rid of everything.
Right. Yeah. And then they had to bring in J.J. Abrams and I could see that production be like, listen, we need you to land the ship. It's on fire. The wings are gone. We have a nice runway.
Very true.
People to watch The Mandalorian. So can you do that? He probably was like, I wrote Lost, so I can do anything. But another topic we know, just in the geekdom stuff, we know that you're into comics. So we know you're a big Marvel fan, obviously. Do you have a history in comic books? Are you more of a movie guy, gamer? Like, how do you correspond with the?
Yeah. So for me, I started collecting comic books when I was probably 5-6 years old. Honestly, I was a huge nerd. I loved to read. I read a lot back in the 80s. We didn't have. I played sports and did that, but like I liked to read. So comics was a perfect thing for me. Like, and I love science fiction, Star Wars. So my comic books consisted mostly of G.I. Joe and Transformers in the 80s, early 80s. And that was awesome. That was also my Saturday morning cartoon. So, those are the comic books that I got. I was really into Spider-Man, which my 3-year-old is like, if I could show you videos of him in his Spider-Man costume and all the stuff he does. I mean, and so it's fun to see that. So for me, and then when the Iron Man movie starts, to me that was really my first experience. I think with the new Marvel experience, movie wise, Iron Man sucked me in pretty hard, and I got really into that, and then I started really getting into Iron Man. So, I just think. I think that most people, I think you two would resonate with this too. Like my wife doesn't really get caught into movies like I do. She'll go to movies. She likes it. But like when I go to a movie, I'm sucked into this thing. Right. The whole world is out. And so for me, as a kid growing up and just being a kind of in the clouds type of kid, a lot of times, like superheroes, I was a huge Star Wars fan. My favorite, if you ask me, Matt, what's your favorite TV show of all time? Number 2 is Friday Night Lights, but number 1 is Smallville. And I'm telling you, I almost got a Superman tattoo at one point in my life. Thank God I didn't. But like Smallville is my favorite show of all time, and I watched it religiously, and I went back and watched it. So for me, like fantasy, superheroes, this type of stuff wasn't just not so much an escape from anything bad, but just was this different reality that my mind could go to and enjoy and be a part of. And so for me, that's how I experienced comic books and movies and a lot of that type of stuff. Like video games nowadays, I'm into Kingdom Hearts to this game, and role playing games like Civilization and Sims. To me, those were games that I could go to this place. And so for me, like my favorite book in the world outside Harry Potter, number 1, but number 2 is Ready Player One. Ready Player One was a book that my mind was just blown. Like this book is about me. This book is about my childhood. Like this character is me. And so, as you imagine characters reading a book, to me, I pictured that kid as me and those experiences. And so, for me, all of that type of stuff. For me, it's an easy switch to snap into this fantasy world of stuff and escape to and enjoy whenever I'm consuming those things.
Man, I'll tell you, this is something that I think is cool that we can talk about uniquely on this show. The focus you speak about in the theater or when we're watching TV, right? What happens is, this as a coach, you're snapping into the moment, into the present moment.
Yep.
And I've noticed that athletes or people that function at just a high professional level that are able to commit that focus, we tend to do that in the theater. We just snap everything out. Sure. And for me, it's the same thing as being on the ice. I'm sure for you, it's the same thing as being at the plate. You're just able to do it. It doesn't take anything away from people that can't.
Gamers do it too.
My point. Yeah. So this is not limited just to athletes, right? To be totally fair, like I've said, any professional that's able to do that. And I've always found that because people that do that in the theater, I tell them, you've got something here you probably don't realize that you have, because it's actually not as easy to do that. Yeah. Think. Again, it doesn't take anything away. I did want to go ahead.
I say it a lot to my wife just about and my kids and my boys playing when they play video games and the Splatoon and the Fortnite. Like when she's trying to talk to them and they're not responding, I'm like, you got to understand, like right now. You're locked in. When you are in this video game, you are locked in the outside world, the noises. And you talk about being in the zone in sports. It's the same thing again, like you said, when I'm coaching. And what's funny is that I had this conversation with somebody the other day about when I played high school football. People said, "Oh, did you hear all the crowds and that annoying?" I'm like, I never heard a sound. I never heard any crowds, because I think, like I said, video games, whether you're reading a book, you're locked in the movie. I think that a lot of us can find a way to just block out all of that stuff, and it just makes that experience so much more real and makes it so much better with the ability to be able to do that.
Right. And,
Yeah.
you know, I'll tell you, like you said, just tapping on the things you spoke about, Ready Player One, I can tell you where I was the first time I picked that book up. And Ray, I remember I called Ray right away. I was like, dude, they're talking Ghostbusters on the first page. All right. Like, this is something here. With Smallville, a show that never gets the credit it deserves. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah.
10 seasons over a very, very turbulent time, by the way, in terms of the country. Not that today's not, obviously. But a show that started out with a really unique idea of like a young Clark Kent, for those of you who may not have seen it. And then a show with really one of the best last episodes and last seasons in recent memory. I mean, spoiler alert, he becomes Superman, for those of you who didn't know that. But they do it in a really, really good way. I mean, a really unique way, in a DC way. Did you get a chance to see him in the crossover event that just happened by chance?
I did. I was disappointed, but not surprised. You know, I think whenever it comes to these things, and I followed the show afterwards, and the actors a lot, and kind of how things had fallen off, and Michael Rosenbaum not being. So I get it. And for me, you know, Smallville. The thing about your favorite shows and your favorite movies is that they don't have to be the best. Like Smallville, for the first 3 seasons or so, to me, were some of the best show I've ever watched. But then, like, it went off into like a 3-season. I don't know what in the world it was doing, but like you loved the characters so much, and you loved the actors of the show, that like you're willing to go through that and deal with that. And so, and then I think it recovered. So, you know, I would say the same thing. I'll admit it. I've watched, I think it's in season 17 right now. I've watched Grey's Anatomy from season 1 to season 17 with my wife. And it's not something I like to go around admitting too much, but it's one of those things, like the last couple seasons, in my opinion, have been terrible, but you're so invested into these characters and the show that too bad. Like, you're stuck with it. Like, you kind of have to stick with it. And so, you know, Smallville was that way for a few seasons, where it's like, I don't think they're going in the right direction, and it's bad. Yeah. But like I said, you're so invested in the characters. And I did see the little crossover event. I think it was cool that they at least had it. But it's one of those things, as a fan, you know, you're so excited, but you have to. I think, you know, you have to be real about what the expectation is going to be. And it was what I expected.
The big thing with the crossovers right now is that they're creating that multiverse, and they're pretty much saying that all these characters have always existed, which I think is a cool nod. It doesn't erase Tom Welling. It doesn't erase Smallville. It gives it its place. And I mean, they left. I won't spoiler what Tom Welling's Superman does in the crossover, just in case somebody wants to watch it. But it did leave him in a very interesting position. I'll put it that way. Yes. That, like, you know, I wonder if they're going to do anything with that. But that's pretty cool.
And I'll say to you guys, you know, for me, something my softball players know in my family, but like, I am a huge Disney fan, animated fan. All of those movies, you know, that were like the Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King, those all came out when I was a teenager, and that kind of was a revival of animated. But for any of your fans listening that has not seen Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse, it may be one of the top 5 greatest animated films I've ever seen. And we've probably seen it 10 times in our house, minimum. I think I saw it twice in the theaters, like with one of my kids, and then one again with one of my kids, because it is that good. If you're a nerd, I think I have a lot of friends who are into the Marvel movies like that, and just haven't seen it. And I'm like, this is one of the most hidden gems of any movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, and they're gonna, because it is a multiverse, they are gonna tie that into everything else too, because it just makes sense. And personally, I can't wait for the sequel. I mean, they're even talking about tying it somehow into the games and all this other stuff, which it sounds like you're going to have to get a PS5, Matt, because of the next Spider-Man game coming out at launch.
Yeah, so I heard they went on sale by accident by Walmart or something like that. So now
the pre-orders were a disaster.
But I will say that I have a good friend who is very, very high up in PlayStation, like a top 5 people there, and I've been saving a favor for a while. I got a PSP when they first came out, and so after this phone call, I'm trying to determine, do I use my text message favor? Hey man, how do I get a PS5? I'm debating on that conversation.
You should be asking them to put you in MLB The Show. That's what you should do.
That's just true. That's
Yeah.
very true.
Game, right?
But my 16-year-old would tell me that he prefers the Xbox to the PS5, and I couldn't tell you all the reasons why. Like he's more of a Call of Duty. He's more of a shooter guy, and so he prefers the Xbox. I don't know. We're gonna figure out this Christmas. My kids might be getting a new system for sure.
Yeah, well, so the thing it's really interesting actually. So I'll give you all a little knowledge here, help you out.
There we go.
So the Xbox, I'll say this: the Xbox Series X, not the Series S. Don't get them confused. The Series X, which is going to be the $499 one, is much more powerful than the PS5. What the PS5 has going for, so I mean, you're going to get better graphics, you're going to get better netcode, you're going to get better storage, all with the Xbox. What the Sony has going for them is the exclusives. They have God of War coming. They've got they got the new Spider-Man game at launch. So it's going to be, what do you want to play? If you're a Call of Duty, Madden kind of guy, you want to go Xbox. If God of War and Spider-Man are your jam, then obviously you have to go with Sony. So Matt, it sounds like you might have to get both. Like me.
And sneaking those by my wife will be difficult. But
listen, you do the geek offensive, right? You find a closet like Harry Potter. You put one of them in, you got to see that visual, her walking opening the door and just you looking like, hey, this is what it looks like, but.
And actually, Microsoft's very smart, though. Microsoft actually is doing it. They said they're going to do a payment plan for 2 years if you get the Xbox Series X. If you prefer, it's $35 a month. But you also get their Game Pass, which gives you access to hundreds of games in their backlog.
Smart.
So, yes, you get a bunch of games through the payment plan at launch. Sony countering, if you spend $60 a year on their PlayStation Online or PlayStation Plus service, you will also get hundreds of games in your backlog right at the launch. So whichever backlog you prefer.
And I would guess that down the road, the entire library of PS2, PS4 games, all the old games will be on a cloud and all backlogged, and you'll be able to play all of those and use all of those. And
Nintendo does.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, kind of like Lee said, to me, I always think about, I'm sure you guys have seen that, I think it's Post Malone meme of like, my wife asked me to make dinner while I was out, and she came back, and he's got like the goggles on, kind of looking at her like, what? And to me, like, that's a perfect example of my life. Like, my wife, she's gone for a couple hours, comes home, like, looks around like, you did nothing, and I got a controller in my hand. Like, yeah, this is what we've been doing.
The other night, my wife, whom I love more than anything, except for my kids, obviously, is a doctor. And so we had this funny moment the other night. She came home from saving the world, and she comes out, I was like, what were you doing today, saving the world? And she goes, yeah, what are you doing? I was playing the Avengers. I said, saving the world.
Same thing.
I was like, one of these is really saving the world, but, and you're a doctor. No, I didn't say it like that. Matt, I do have to ask you, I do want to make sure that we speak about the book coming out that you'll be doing. Is it Dear Coach, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
So Dear Coach is a book that Dear Coach is a book that I did last year, right. A collection of emails and stories. But I'll start promoting it in October. But my book that's going to come out in November is called Take Your Swing, and it's basically my life story with a lot of encouragement and talking about how to deal with failure and adversity and hitting rock bottom and still coming out on the other end and trying to achieve your dreams and goals a little bit. So kind of a little bit of a guidebook on, if you've made a lot of bad decisions and you've had a lot of failure and adversity in your life, here's a roadmap to getting past all those things. And so my goal is November 15th ish to have it come out, but I'm excited about that. And honestly, thanks to social media, it was really just encouraged by a lot of my followers who have DM'd me and emailed me and said, hey, Matt, your story has helped my life. I can tell you guys, I had a story a couple years ago of a guy who's been following me for a long time who was an alcoholic, and he told me that some of my stories and got him to stop drinking, and he's been sober for 2 years and attributes that. And so for me, and I'm sure it is for you guys too, in this journey of social media and sharing and interviewing people, is that you get listeners who listen and they take a nugget and they go, you know what, that applies to me, that resonates with me, and tomorrow I'll try that, or tomorrow or today I'm gonna try to improve myself a little bit by that. And I think that's why we watch the shows that we do and we listen to the podcasts that we do, is in the hopes of getting those tidbits. And so I'm hoping my book does that for some people as well.
I think that is phenomenal that you're willing to send the elevator back down to help people. I think that says everything about you as a person. And I think it also says why you've been successful. And like, you go back to the beginning of your story about how you're willing to just give the information away, and then it pays itself forward in a lot of ways. I do have to go into Dear Coach for a minute. So there's a story behind this. So Dear Coach is a book that's out right now. It's a top selling book on Amazon. And as you said, I'm looking at it right now, but it's, a lot of advice and how to resolve conflicts and, emails and things that you've gotten from different people. So there's a funny story here for you, Matt. Now, our producer, Caitlin Reese, who is a phenomenal human being and a phenomenal producer. She just graduated college. She's a great human being. I really cannot compliment her enough. The reason why this is funny is because she has very bashfully told us, and we've actually set her up for this by telling her that we weren't going to bring this up on the interview, but she'll be happy that we did. When she was younger and in high school, apparently she got herself blocked on your Twitter channel, which she is extremely, extremely remorseful about on her end. She doesn't she even explained to us, I was young and I didn't know what I was doing and I was challenging him on something I shouldn't have been challenging him on. So Ray and I wanted to come on here out of respect for her and say, A, can we get her unblocked on your Twitter channel?
That is amazing.
One, right? And two, we wanted to let you know that she's really, really sorry about whatever it is that she said.
That is amazing. It
was
amazing
is that you're on the show because of her. She contacted you. That's what's amazing to me.
Well, what's funny to me about that is that until the last 2 years, I never really blocked anybody. You had to have really, really got me upset to block you anything sub 2018. So now I'm fascinated by why would I have done that? And
I know.
But what's funny is that I do remember a DM exchange with it may not have been her. It could have been someone else. But I do remember a DM exchange where a girl, I couldn't tell you the age, was challenging me on some hitting stuff, and I just got really annoyed and blocked her. And
that's totally her.
That was her.
Now that you guys are saying that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta look through. Maybe I'm hoping my old DMs might actually have the conversation, because
let me assure you that she had the conversation. So this definitely
what is her Twitter name or handle?
It might be Reese Mode, REISS Mode. I will actually look it up right now, and if we have to edit this part just for timing, we will, because it's just totally worth this part of the conversation. I'm glad I brought it up. Here's the funny part about it, Matt, while we're talking about this, and I'm trying to look up the conversation on my end too, is that Caitlin is relentless. She was an NCAA athlete. So it's funny because although her intentions were completely misplaced in this conversation with you, surprised that she pursued this against, I shouldn't say against, but with you, because your credentials don't already speak for themselves, obviously, right? That she would challenge you on hitting advice. But I do want to tell you again that she was very, very I was young.
Yeah.
Reese
Mode is her. Reese Mode. I guess it's okay. She's on Twitter. It's a public forum. Reese Mode is her Twitter handle. So I just put it in chat. I think she was very challenging of your hitting tactics, I think.
Yeah. And Matt, we've had conversations before this record. She's like, you shouldn't say anything because then he might not do the episode. And I'm sure he'll do the episode.
There, I found her. There she is. What's funny about that is, again, she must have just caught me at a really, because I would tell you whatever you, it says you're blocked. I just unblocked her. Let's see if that does anything.
Okay. Yeah, well, there you go. All right. Caitlin, you've been unblocked. We did our job. I'm going to text her right now and say, do me a favor.
So I unblocked her, but she blocked me. It says you're blocked.
That's funny. She was probably like, well, he's going to block me. Well, screw you. I'll block him back.
That is exactly what she did. I've just put in the text to her to unblock her. If she unblocks
that is so funny. So she's unblocked. But all that to say is, which is funny about that is that if you guys knew probably from 2013 to 2017, I probably blocked 2 people. And so she might have been one or two. And for me to do that is amazing. I'm very curious now.
Right. So I thought about that too before I brought this up, because I did know bringing this up might compromise the branding a little bit for you, which I wasn't trying to do. So I do want.
Oh no, I have to the show. I have no problem blocking people nowadays.
Okay,
basically, if you are talking about a lot of politics or come at me and are just really rude, right. I have no problem. Like for me, the one thing that I've learned from social media over this since 2016 to now, I would say just in general, social media for me can't be a negative experience or a negative feed. Mm-hmm. I go to social media to enjoy other coaches and learn stuff and get stuff. So if there's a lot of negativity, it takes away from the experience for me. There were a lot of times that I didn't block people because it's like, oh, you know what? I don't want to be rude, or I don't want them to think I don't like them, or this and that. And I just think nowadays, if someone comes at you really hard, I'm either going to come sidebar them and try to have the conversation and work out the relationship if I know them. Right. But otherwise, it's just not. I can't. I don't need the negativity in my life, and so I have no problem blocking people now. But I think back in the day, I was a little more subconscious. That's what's funny to me about the Caitlin story is that I can't wait to see if she unblocks me and I can find the messages. I would love to. 2 things.
One is that the story you just told us about social media. Yeah, social media is very much based on who you surround yourself with, much like real life. And if you surround yourself with positive people, you're going to get positive messages. I also just received a message from Caitlin. It says, oh, shoot, I had him blocked too? Yikes. So she's unblocked you. And I'm going to see if we can do a good deed on this show and connect the 2 of you finally, once again, thus redeeming the origin story of this entire podcast. And putting to bed years of blocked frustration with Caitlin Reese and Coach Lisle.
Yeah, right, so I'm going to follow. I'm reading my DMs to her right now. 2016, 2015. We'll just leave it at that. We'll just leave it.
There you go. That's fine. That's fine. Again, for those of you listening, she is relentless, and now she's pursuing it the right way. But don't read too much, Matt. That's not her anymore. She said that. She did say that. That's
funny. And the same for me. We'll have a virtual hug it out.
There you go.
I'm glad. And honestly, I'm glad you guys said that. And like to me, again, last year there was an MLB guy who runs one of the MLBs, and I noticed he blocked me. And I just reached out to him like an email. I'm like, hey, he was cool. He's like, you know what? I don't even remember blocking you, and why and unblocked me. And I think that's one of the things that's great about social media and relationships in general. I think like there's a lot of times that like that conversation with her and I can see like I was getting frustrated and she was challenging me, and it's like, it's probably just a much different conversation like how you and I, the 3 of us, are having here, and that's kind of how life is. And I think something we're talking to our kids a lot about right now is kids are struggling right now to have conversations because their whole world is online and through chat and through DMs and Snap and having these conversations face to face on the phone in the Zoom calls is really difficult for them. And we've got to make sure we do a better job teaching our kids how to do it.
Well, that's even part of the reason why I think I've actually had some people reach out to me on Twitch. Is that part of the reason why a lot of kids, it's funny. Our demo, if we're going to get into real technical stuff here, our demo for our podcast is a little older, more around folks our age, whereas my Twitch stream appeals more to younger kids. And a lot of these kids reach out, they're in their teens, and they're like, I don't have high school right now because of the pandemic. I don't have junior high because of the pandemic. This is just so much fun just to be able to talk with baseball with people again, because I don't get to do this with my friends right now because of everything that's going on in the world. And so that's why,
timing.
it's all about the timing, but it's a lot of these kids right now, they're people forget people are struggling. Adults are struggling because they're in isolation and all stuff. Kids are struggling just as much. They might not show it in the same ways, but they're struggling too. So definitely finding a way to kind of make sure that everybody is getting through this as best as possible and the most healthy way possible is definitely a great message. And I think probably a good point to end the show on. I think a nice uplifting thought there. So, Matt, thank you so much for joining us on what is episode 100 of our brand. We appreciate it. This has been a great talk with you. And please, you have to come back on when we get closer to your next book coming out in November.
I would love it.
Yeah, we can talk more ball. By then, the World Series will be over. We can talk about what happened in the playoffs, and it should be a good time. But we really appreciate your time again, Matt, for coming on the show. So be sure to check out Coach Matt Lisle, folks. He's on all the social media. He's everywhere. He's the most interactive with Coach on social media. You can find him everywhere. He's obviously a great guy to talk to about baseball and video games and Marvel and Star Wars. And as we've shown his geek side here today a little bit more. Matt, thanks again for coming on the show, buddy. We really appreciate it.
And then he can forgive people that have
made him block. You too may be unblocked.
Such a great addition to this whole thing. That's really good. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Cool. Thank you again, Matt. For Lee, I'm Ray. This has been the latest Geeks Who Like Sports Leaderboard interview. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time.